Hello, and welcome to the unpacking of the critical lens, post-structuralism, the post-structuralist critical lens. This is a really powerful critical lens because of the amount of potential you have for analysis, that it's quite open-ended and you can go anywhere you want according to um, what you can find in the text or what you want to challenge in the text. This lens is all about challenging uh, the what would you call it, the traditional interpretation of a text, and about saying that is not the right interpretation. There are all of these other possibilities. So it is quite an abstract concept that has led to this critical lens, but there's a lot of reward in understanding these ideas. The first concept of post-structuralism is that language is uh, infinitely complex, that the relationships between words and their meaning, their connotation, their denotation is infinitely complex, and we can't ever pin down a single word to a single meaning. This is due to the context that the words are used in, the context that the reader is reading that word in, the context of the words around that word. Uh, Post-structuralism considers all of those minute aspects of language and how language is communicated and how language is perceived into challenging the very meaning of language. And that comes down to the second point, that meaning is inherently dynamic, that there is never one correct interpretation of a word, of a phrase, sentence, paragraph, whole text, that everything is contestable, and that everything is correct at the same time. This kind of reminds me of quantum physics, how things exist in multiple states at the same time, not as multiple discrete states, but as a possibility of discrete states. So that's part of the complexity of this, that nothing is wrong. I would say more, the correct answer is everything is right. And to say that one thing is right is incorrect, you need to include all of the other things as equal possibilities, as equal meanings. The next concept is comes down to the idea that this is post-structuralism. This obviously follows the movement of structuralism. This is the movement after structuralism, which was all about finding really neat designations of language and of meaning. So, of course, post-structuralism is the challenge of that, that structure is a lie. Um, and that comes down to that idea of meaning being infinitely or inherently dynamic and correct in all of its different possibilities. To say that there is one correct structure or one correct um, understanding or correct way of articulating something would be a lie. That everything is constantly dynamic, and maybe moving around certain words or excluding words could contain a similar meaning. It might have a totally different meaning if you read the same thing uh, a different time. And this kind of relates to the reader response theory, that the reader is also bringing the text to life. So if you read, let's think of any book, A Clockwork Orange, for example. If you read that when you are a teenager, you might really identify with some of the characters, some of the phrases might jump out at you, versus when you read it when you are middle age, other things are going to jump out at you, other things are going to be more meaningful and more moving. And that's not because the text has changed, the language has stayed constant, but the the meaning also, the denotation of those words has not changed. Maybe the connotation of those words has changed according to your own experiences and your own understanding. The terms used in post-structuralism: signifier and signified. This is a concept, a term or pair of terms that's used to describe words or packages of meaning. This doesn't exclusively apply to language, it applies across all modes of communication. So this can also apply to pictures, for example. The signifier is the thing that is meant to present the meaning. So the word cat is a really common example used for the signifier. The letters CAT is the signifier, and the signified is the picture of a cat in your mind. And where post structuralism jumps at this is it problematizes what the cat is in your mind. It could be a ginger cat, for example. It could be a black cat. It could be a cat that's in a defensive posture and puffing itself up. It could be any number of things that are all going to be signified by the same signifier. So it says there is never a direct relationship with these ideas. There's always room to play. And I'm just going to skip quickly to play here. Play means the intentional play or the intentional misunderstanding or alternative understanding of these words, and particularly of the signifier and signified. So, intentionally looking for something that wasn't intended but could still be an appropriate way of understanding a text. In, I believe this is Derrida's original work, he used the play as essentially a pun throughout his work. And then that pun became a pun in of itself because he was playing with language using the word play to make a play on language. So that's the kind of thing that post structuralists like to do. This next term, binary opposition, is the idea from structuralism that a lot of language is designed around opposites. So these opposites could be, um, for example, boy and man. Could also be light and dark. Could be land and sea. Post structuralism loves the challenge of language, and what it seeks to do is break down those binary oppositions. So, boy might have a binary opposition with man, but boy might also have a binary opposition with girl, for example. And the fact that it has both of those at once is a success for post structuralism, meaning doesn't have a single stagnant meaning, it has a dynamic meaning. And the last term here is deconstruction. That is the process of problematizing language, about picking out words and considering other things that it could mean, which could reshape the whole sentence, it could reshape a whole paragraph or a whole story when you inspect these elements closely enough. Deconstruction is, uh, as post structuralism is the opposite to structuralism, here it's really being the opposite of construction. You are challenging the author or you're challenging the text to be something more. The seminal contributors of post structuralism, there are many, but really the originals or the really early contributors are Jacques Derrida and Roland Barthes. Both have their own styles. I would say Derrida has a more complex style, so reading his original text can be more challenging. I think that was his intention, to be difficult to understand in a single way, as is the intention of post structuralism, but is more of my favorite, if I'm allowed to say that, because he started as a structuralist. And as the philosophy and linguistics evolved, he evolved with it. So he's a really interesting person to study in his changes, in his perspectives. And lastly, I'll take you to a sample thesis here. By considering a post-structuralist lens, one is empowered to participate in Shakespeare's playful deconstruction of self in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Uh, Again, this sample thesis uses the terms of post-structuralism. It uses the idea, and I like this part here that we're participating in the text. That's the idea that meaning is being made dynamic by audiences interacting with the text, and they interact with the text by expanding it, by making new texts and new understandings and multiplying the value of the text because there is more A Midsummer Night's Dreams and more selves to understand as responders add new meaning to it through their own deconstruction. Okay, lots of ideas there. It's a wonderful critical lens to play with, particularly if you like to challenge questions, challenge ideas, and challenge texts. All right, thanks for that. See you later.